so far. So today will be another very exciting show as I will be joined by the wonderful Ross Morrison McGill, also known as Teacher Toolkit.
Live from Abu Dhabi, this is The Breakfast Show with Kate Jones on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live on the Podbean app or desktop player. Just head over to www.podbean.com/LSW/TT Radio or search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TT Radio.
Good morning, everyone, and I can see a few familiar names in the studio. So if you are listening live, please do tell me where you're listening from. And as I said, I hope you're having a fantastic summer holiday so far. I certainly am. Good morning, Freya in Rome. Oh, amazing. Thank you for joining me again. Freya's absolutely brilliant, part of the Teacher Talk Radio team. So as I said, I am loving the summer holidays. I hope you are. Why am I loving the summer holidays so much? Well, actually, I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I have because I'm not seeing my family this summer, which is tough, but actually I'm making the most of this situation. Oh, we've got Dorian listening from Cyprus. And, oh, is that Tom Hopkins Burke? It's your second day of the holidays. What? It's so interesting how teachers finish at different times. I know Freya finished earlier. I finished earlier because we teach internationally. I finished 1st of July. So I'm really relaxed into the swing of the summer holidays. So before Ross McGill, Teacher Toolkit, joins me, and he'll be joining me at 9:30 today. So I'm sure you're very familiar with Ross McGill. He is a published author. He's got a huge following on Twitter. He delivers CPD. He's absolutely brilliant. So there's lots and lots to talk to Ross about. But before we do that, let's talk about the summer holidays. What are you doing? You may be restricted because of the current situation, travel restrictions that are in place. I could have gone back to the UK this summer, but the UAE is on the red list. So that would have meant two options: traveling to the UK via another country. So quite a few of my friends, they went to Greece, had 2 weeks there, and then that was an amber country, so they didn't have to isolate in a hotel. And then lots of my other friends actually just went straight to the UK and quarantined in a hotel. I'm not sure if it was 10 days or 2 weeks, but I didn't really fancy any of those options, and I am moving back to the UK to live permanently. So I thought I would make the most of the summer here in Abu Dhabi. And the reason why I'm loving the summer holidays so much is just because I'm doing everything that I enjoy. And there's this ongoing debate about the summer holidays. Should teachers work? Should they completely switch off? Of course, we all know what the answer to that is. The answer is just do whatever you want, do what makes you happy. So anyone who does follow me on social media will see that I'm doing a bit of both, a bit of switching off. I have beach and pool days because I'm very lucky here in Abu Dhabi. It's very hot. I have camper days. I'm reading some brilliant books. But then there's other days where I'm doing some writing. I'm reading educational books. I'm also writing my 6th book at the moment, which I can't quite believe. My 5th book is out in September, and that is Formative Assessment. That was edited by Dylan William and Tom Sherrington. So I'm very excited, but that book is finished. And I'm now co-authoring a book with Robin McPherson. This is a really exciting book. What Robin's written so far is brilliant. A teacher life. I'll explain more a little bit about that as we progress throughout the next few weeks, although I'm not sure how much I can give away. I don't want to get in trouble with Robin, so I'll keep that on the down low. But one of the reasons that I think I feel so brilliant at the moment is because I'm really looking after myself. I'm sleeping well. I wake up every day and I exercise. I'm very lucky. I have a treadmill and a cross trainer and weights in my apartment, and that might seem like a bit of a luxury. But there's a few reasons why I decided to buy a treadmill. Last year we went into complete lockdown here. And it became difficult to go outside. You could go outside to exercise, but it involved wearing a mask in the heat, and there was also curfew, and it was quite challenging. The gyms all shut down in lockdown as well. So I felt that was really important for me if I was in lockdown to keep exercising. But there is another reason why I bought a treadmill. In Abu Dhabi, the heat is just on another level. And it's really interesting when people in the UK are going, oh, it's so hot. And I look how hot it is. And it's still not as hot as it is here, but this is the Middle East. And we do climatize, we get used to it, and there's aircon blasting everywhere. But yeah, simply, for me, I just find the heat, it can be a little bit difficult to exercise in that heat. So treadmill was one of the best purchases I've made since I've been out here. And I wake up every morning and I get on my treadmill and I go for a run. And then I just feel completely energized for the rest of the day. And that isn't something that I do during term time. And the summer holidays have made me realize how I don't prioritize exercise enough during term time. I wake up, I go to school quite early in the morning to get myself ready for the day. And then I come home and I'm still working, or I'll switch off and watch some television or something like that. And sometimes exercise can just pass me by, and I absolutely won't let that happen again. So I wanted to talk about hashtag Couch to 5K Teachers. And Freya said, yes, same debate as always. I like you. I'm like you. I'd like to do both. I love following Freya on Twitter, because Freya will post about beautiful Italian food she's eating, and I love to see that. But then I also love to see the educational books that she's reading. And I think that's it. It's about finding our own balance in our lives. And it's not helpful when there's judgment either way. There's been lots of great discussions about this. Cheryl Kidd wrote a great blog that said, just be very careful that NQTs or early career teachers don't see Twitter and think, oh, we have to work in the summer. So in some ways, we should be well-being role models and share about the non-educational stuff that we do, and show that we do relax and we do have other interests and things that we enjoy outside of education. But having said that, nobody should be called sad or any sort of name for wanting to read about education or their subject. So, whatever makes them happy. So hashtag Couch to 5K Teachers. If you're not familiar with Couch to 5K, it is a free app that you can download, created by the NHS. And it's just basically designed to help people get in shape and get fitter. And it is designed for complete beginners. So when you download the app, as I've said, it's free. There's a choice of different narrators on the Couch to 5K app. There's Joe Wiley, there's Sarah Milligan. There's all these different people who will sort of act as your guide as you get through it. And it's a gradual running process. So obviously you could do this on a treadmill, you could go outside in nature, and it tells you how long to walk for, how long to run for. And the first week starts off with, every week starts off with a warm-up, about 5-minute walk, and then you run for a minute, and then you'll walk for 2 minutes, or something like that, and run for a minute. And it really is great for beginners. And I say that because last year I took up yoga again, and I did yoga many years ago. And I thought, I'm going to go to a beginner's class here in Abu Dhabi. And I went, and the yoga teacher said, well, I assume you've all done yoga before. And I just was very confused by that. I said, isn't this a beginner's class? So can't people who've never done yoga come here? And actually, I was probably the only real beginner in that class. It was just filled with sort of experts and yoga teachers. And initially, it was a little bit intimidating, and I was a little bit angry because I thought this isn't beginners at all. So sometimes I think beginners can be misleading, but not with Couch to 5K. So if you're thinking, oh, I hate running, or I've never ran, or it's not for me, honestly, just try it. Just try the first week, stick to it. I didn't think that I would be a runner, but I really, really love running. And I think there's lots of things that can sort of hold us back, maybe some myths or things like, oh, I was no good at PE in school, or I know some women have had this conversation with me, and Sarah Milligan makes a joke saying, get your sports bar on. Whatever your physique, you can run, you can get walking and moving. And the whole idea of Couch to 5K is that you are walking and running at intervals, and it gradually builds up, and you will see your fitness improve and increase, and it changes with each week. But there's lots of online forums, and if you don't achieve it, then you can just repeat the week again. And they encourage you to have rest days. They give you sort of tips and advice. Yes, we've got a comment from Sophie. Yeah, I love Couch to 5K that you can play your own music and podcast, and then the Couch to 5K talks over the top. Yes, I always have my own music. So you can have the app on and you can play your music, and then the narrator, the coach will just talk over that, and they will say, right, now's the time to run. Okay, stop running. Now you're going to walk for 90 seconds. And now you're going to run for 5 minutes. So if anyone else has experienced the Couch to 5K, do let us know. Let us know what week you are at. Or if you haven't started it, maybe download the app now and just give it a go. And I'd love to hear from other people. If you've got any tips. Oh, yes, Jenny, I get stuck at week 3. Yeah, so week 3, that's been a tough week. That's where, so week 1 and week 2, week 1, you're running for a minute and then walking. So that's not too bad. Week 2, it increases to 90 seconds. And then week 3, you run for 90 seconds, then you walk, and then you run for 3 minutes. So actually, lots of people say that they get stuck at week 3. And I remember reading on online forums to just sort of keep going. If you have to do week 3, perhaps 2 weeks in a row. There are certain points in the Couch to 5K, and week 3 is one of them. And I think there's another week where that's the point where people sort of drop off and then they give up. So it is really tough. It is. So just keep going with it. Perseverance. And obviously you should never run through any pain or anything like that. And it is designed as a weekly thing. So you have to have patience and patience with your body and push yourself, but obviously not too far. And I'm not a health expert or fitness guru. I just like to run. And I think the benefits of that on mental and physical health are absolutely incredible. So maybe you're not doing Couch to 5K, whatever it is you're doing this summer holiday, do let me know. Do share if there's any books that you'd like to suggest, whether they're educational or not. Last week was a special episode of Teachers Talk Radio, and I recommended 5 educational books, 5 non-educational books. It seems like lots of us have got a reading list that we're trying to work our way through in the summer holidays, and that's again quite nice. It's this luxury of time. The time to read, the time to sleep a little bit longer, or to just do whatever it is that we want. So please do get in touch, whether you're listening live in the Podbean app, right in the studio, if you're listening on social media. I want to hear from you about what you are doing in the summer holidays.
Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. At Creative Resources, we've been rethinking what a classroom can be. We've created a huge range of more than 2,500 original and exciting resources that span across more than 15 different subject areas. Whether you're looking for primary or secondary level resources, careers options, PSHE, arts, or humanities, Creative Resources have the resources for you. We offer full curriculum packages and unique, challenging escape rooms themed on topics such as Shakespeare, Tudors, and fractions. We have quizzes, task cards, Tarsia puzzles, and lots more. Better still, more than 100 resources can be accessed for free. Just visit our website, www.CRE8TIVEresources.com. You can get 10% off any order you make on our website by using the discount code TTRadio. Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful, and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TTRadio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club. Introducing the Leadership Masterclass series by Diana Osagi. Learn how to ditch your fears and develop your leadership confidence. How to deal with difficult colleagues. How to thrive when you lead in a challenging environment. And how to get colleagues to buy into your vision. Join Diana for her online leadership masterclasses starting on the 10th of July and running all the way through the summer. These sessions are the perfect way to prepare and refresh for the next academic year and beyond. Book your place at courageousleadership.co.uk/events now. The first 50 leaders to sign up get an additional free mini coaching session with Diana herself. Don't miss this. Courageous Leadership Masterclasses at courageousleadership.co.uk/events.
Oh, and thank you to our award-winning voiceover artist, Graham, for that wonderful advert. And we have Saul listening. He says, I'm sitting here in the sun in my backyard with a nice coffee, looking forward to the show. Oh, well, isn't that just amazing? We're just living the dream. Oh, and he's listening live from South Africa. And I love that about Teachers Talk Radio, about how global we are. We've got someone in Ireland who says it's lashing here. I think that means it's raining a lot. We've got Italy, we've got Wales, we've got England. Oh, we've got Cyprus. I love this. I love how global it is. Yeah, and that's another thing. Probably, why do I feel so amazing? Well, I'm out in the sunshine a lot. I'm exercising. I'm sleeping. I'm spending time with my friends. So yeah, lots of great things. So as I've said, tell me about Couch to 5K. If you've done that, if you're a runner, if you've got any advice. Yes, I do have a treadmill, but I'm not a marathon runner. I don't have any particular types of trainers, so I just wear sort of normal gym clothes. So anyone can do it, and I would urge you all to download that app. So something else I wanted to just mention before Ross comes onto the show, and I know he's ready, he's listening, he'll be here soon. There's 2 articles that I've written lately for the TES, and I love writing for the TES, just because they've got a wide audience. Dan Worth, the editor, always just seems to make everything I write just that bit better. He's fantastic, and I like writing these short, snappy, punchy articles. Oh, we've also got Sophie listening from Leicester. Haven't opened the curtains yet, so I'm not sure if it's sunny. Don't worry, you just stay there, you just relax. Lots of people joining the studio now, fantastic. And oh, it's spitting, everybody in, it's spitting in Nottingham. Tom Hopkins Perks. Oh, we've got all the weather updates coming in. Actually, that's something that we don't have on Teachers Talk Radio. We've got a news host. We need a weather woman or a weatherman. Oh, we've got someone listening from Madrid, 35 degrees in Madrid. Oh, this is really interesting. Yes, so Tom Hopkins Burke says, yes, we need to get weather reports on Teachers Talk Radio. Scotcho in Abu Dhabi. Oh, and Jenny says it's chucking it down in Scotland. Actually, I really do miss the rain. I cannot wait to get back to the UK. I miss the seasons. I was meant to be coming back in July, but as I've mentioned previously, my replacement can't start until January. So I'm staying at my school until December, which is fantastic because I love the school. I get one more extra term, but I'm absolutely devastated for the 6th year in a row. I'm going to miss autumn, my favourite season. So I'm really, really sad about that. Oh, and Nathan in South Wales. Yeah, luckily it rains plenty in Wales. I can't wait. So, almost summertime in Africa. The rain is going so good. Okay. So my TES article was about how I use study strategies to boost my subject knowledge. So if you are teaching new content, a new topic, and I think lots of teachers experience this, there will be things that we teach that we're very confident and experienced and knowledgeable about, and then others where there's gaps in our knowledge. And not only does that affect our confidence, but that can affect our explanations, just how we are in the classroom as well, even perhaps our feedback. So I've written an article, which I will tweet out, about how I use retrieval practice to help increase my own subject knowledge. So previously, I would just reread textbooks, perhaps make notes, and I would do the things that I was telling my students not to do. So whereas now, I will read a textbook, and then as I'm reading it, I might create some questions. And then later, after some time has passed, I'll quiz and test myself. And actually, sometimes when I do those quizzes, I then use those same quiz questions with my students. So I just think that's really interesting. For teachers, we talk about retrieval practice. I mean, I talk about retrieval practice all the time, and I could talk to Ross about this because he's really interested in memory. But do we use those effective strategies ourselves as teachers? So that is interesting. If you're brushing up on your subject knowledge, Sol says my learning strategy is we play video games and listening to audiobooks. Yeah, but you wouldn't recommend that to your students, would you? And actually, how effective is that? So whatever your learning strategies are, do let me know. Perhaps you do that. Perhaps you do retrieval practice. Perhaps you just have a quick refresher and read some notes before the lesson. Or perhaps you are very fortunate that you've been teaching for so long that you are very confident and secure within your subject knowledge. So we don't have anyone doing a weather report, but let's go over and hear the Teachers Talk Radio latest news.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
This is your latest Teachers Talk Radio News with Gail Glenn. In Scotland, business leaders have warned that preschool nurseries may be forced to close temporarily as a result of rising number of staff having to self-isolate. Private creches would like the Scottish Government to classify their staff as key workers so that they can avoid having to self-isolate if pinged by the Test and Protect COVID tracing service. Private creches are relied on by thousands of parents when local authority nurseries are closed during the holidays. The staffing situation was described by Sharon Fairley, owner of the Little Flyers chain of nurseries in West Lothian, as deeply concerning. She said the reality is that many of our frontline workers, our NHS doctors and nurses, our ambulance drivers, police, firemen and women, even our supermarket truck drivers, rely on being able to place their children in nursery in order to attend their own jobs. Last week, the Scottish Government announced exemptions to self-isolation for workers involved in critical roles where staff shortages are in danger of putting at risk essential services such as health and social care, transport, and the provision of food supplies. Sharon recently founded the Scottish Private Nursery Association to campaign for an exemption for self-isolation. A poll of 3,221 teachers in England, carried out by Sutton Trust, found that 23% of teachers working in private schools said that they had been pressured by one or more parents over their child's grades during the past academic year. 11% of teachers working at schools in disadvantaged areas had been approached by parents, compared to 17% in the most affluent state schools, evidencing a social gap between state schools. The views of 497 UK students were also looked at by the Sutton Trust report, and 22% felt that their grades would be worse than in a typical year. Erica Holt-White, the Sutton Trust Research and Policy Officer, said, "This year's assessments were never going to be perfect, and it is likely that we will again see students left unhappy with their results. What is vital now is that universities and schools do all they can to ensure that these students, especially from the poorest backgrounds, do not unfairly lose out because of it." This has been your daily education news briefing.
Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TTRadio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club.
Thank you again to Graham. So, as I said, we've got our guest joining us very soon. If you've got any questions for Ross Morrison McGill, I've got loads of questions. I've got lots of things that I want to talk to him about, but you can write them in the chat box in Podbean, or if you are listening through the streaming apps, so we are on Facebook and Twitter, you can tweet me at KateJones_teach. I'm also that on Instagram at KateJones_teach. And I also have a Facebook page. And I'm also on LinkedIn as well. I'm all over social media, but I'm not as good at social media as our guest, Ross Morrison McGill. He is the social media king of education and EduTwitter. So I'll be asking him about that. We'll be talking about his books. And actually, Saul, listening from South Africa, is that right, Saul? Yep. Saul says about how he enjoys listening to an audiobook, and me too as well. I really love Audible, and I have a thing with Audible, probably like lots of people do. I think it's $7.99 a month, and then you get credits, and actually that does work out quite well if you are buying quite a lot of audiobooks, because some of the audiobooks can be perhaps £15, or you can buy it with a credit. So I have loads in my Audible collection. I've got educational books. So I've got Ross's Just Great Teaching. And what I really love about Ross, Andrea Zafriakou, a previous guest on our show, she was the Global Teacher Prize winner. she's also got an audiobook, and David Didow, and they have narrated the audiobooks themselves. Let's see. Hello, we have got our caller. Are you there?
Good morning.
Brilliant. Hello, Ross.
Hi, Kate.
Hi, how are you?
I am very well. Nice to talk to you. Hello, everybody listening.
Yes, thank you, because I have been asking you for a while. I asked you ages ago,
You
and
did, yes.
so I didn't give up. I got you in the end, so I'm
Yes.
really, really pleased. Oh, it's amazing. Well, I start off with all my guests with a fun fact.
Right.
And this fun fact about you, I actually shared in my first show, because my first guest was Tom Sherrington. And my fun fact about him was that he's worked with you. You
Yeah.
worked together. And people don't know that. That's amazing. So you worked together in the same school. Was he your line manager?
He wasn't directly, no. Tom was a deputy head at the time, and he appointed me as a head of department. And it was a brand new school. It was a bit like Michaela before social media. And there was just 13 teachers. And I think I joined just as year 8 was starting. So there was year 7 and 8. And we kind of grew the school. Yeah, I guess it's kind of the foundation. So pretty much, ordering tables and chairs to the color of the paint on the corridors, to the school logo, to absolutely everything. All those kind of original teachers appointed were a part of designing the school's vision and values. And it's amazing to see the school still thriving 3 years later. And if people believe in PISA rankings, the last PISA report, they topped the table in the world.
Wow.
So it was actually reported as the best school in the world. But there you go.
Oh, amazing. Well, and you and Tom Sherrington, you've been blogging for ages, and all the stuff that is now becoming, more teachers are getting involved with.
Yeah.
You, I suppose, are the originals, should we say?
Oh, yeah. So I started, well, I've been blogging since 2000, but it was a travel blog. And in 2007, when I left the school that I was working with at Tom to start my first school leadership position, so this is back in 2007, I thought, well, let me try a little teaching blog. And I probably only wrote 20 or 30 blogs on the original Teacher Toolkit site. And it was pretty much something I did in my half-term holidays more than anything. It was merely an online diary. And back then, I think 30,000 views, which isn't no mean feat. And it was good fun, but nothing serious. And the world of bloggers then, it was, no one knew anything about it. So, it was pretty much a diary. And then it's grown into what it is today.
Yeah, and we'll talk about your website, because I'm a subscriber, so I'm always on
you're
there.
in the know.
I know all about your website. But I was doing my research about you, and I know a lot about you anyway, because you were the first person I followed on EduTwitter, because my deputy head teacher told me to.
Right.
And then that was it was 2015, Teach Meet London at your school.
Yeah.
Where I travelled from North Wales, because there was no Teach Meets happening. So
Wow.
I went all the way to London, and I got
That's
to have a
commitment.
selfie with, I remember the selfie with you, meeting you, being completely inspired. And I think that was the start of my journey. But I've been trying to figure out how many books you've written. I've got 6 written down, but you've contributed to more.
Yeah,
But
so that's right. So I think I've got 6 of my own, and I'm currently working on a 4th co-copy with one of my bloggers, actually. I think about 2 or 3 years ago, when the website started to go a bit crazy and I had a bit more capacity, I thought I'd start to open up the website to allow other teachers to blog in a safe platform, and use my wisdom and the people around me to kind of guide and support them. And it was great to get a wider range of topics and a wider range of voices, and several of them just had that writing gene. And I guess using some of my wisdom, not just writing the book, but the contracts, the editorial layout, all that type of stuff. So I kind of guided them through that. So Dr. Helen Woodley wrote Toxic Schools, which is, I think, the first book of its kind. We were both quite keen to lift the carpet and talk about that topic. Then Holly Anderton, we wrote a kind of gender stereotype book, Hairdresser or Footballer. And then Hannah Beach, who's a deputy head in Kent, we wrote 60 Second CPD, which was really popular. And I've got another one on its way, but I'm keeping that one under wraps for now.
Okay, well, that is really exciting. I've read most of your books, and actually we just had a conversation about audiobooks, because I've been listening to your Just Great Teaching. Love that book, by the way. Love it so much.
Thank
And
you.
I cannot believe how much you get into that book. Like, it is jam packed.
Yeah,
with
well,
so
it
much
was.
stuff.
It's a strange one looking back on the book, because I invested my heart and soul into it, and I think it's actually my best book. But it's certainly not a book that would be. Mark Plan Teachers clearly an ideas book for teachers, which is what teachers really need. Plug and play ideas for the classroom the next day. Just Great Teaching is a book that kind of gathers my insights from all the schools I visit around the world. And then I particularly focused in on different types of UK schools to highlight that they're all doing the same thing. They've got different challenges, and cover the kind of key challenges that those are that you'll know in the book. And I absolutely loved researching and visiting the schools and writing about them. Yeah, and it's a book that resonates more so with school leaders, I think. I'm not sure why, but that seems to be the kind of feedback that I've received from it.
Oh, well, I think it's brilliant. I've got my own favourite chapters, like you have your favourite chapter. We'll talk about that, the research-led practice, but it covers obviously curriculum, assessment,
I'll tell you
teacher
one thing,
wellbeing.
that to actually narrate 60,000 words is not easy.
Yeah.
It's 4 days solid, and you have to really work hard to speak slowly, eloquently. Make a mistake, you've got to repeat it again. But it was good fun. It was good fun locking myself in a broom cupboard.
Well, I prefer it to hear the author, because Alex Quigley, we spoke about it, his books, and there's loads of audiobooks where obviously professional voiceover artists do it. And he said, oh, I've heard it's really difficult. But you, Andrea Zafriaku, David Didow, it's so good to hear your voices.
Yeah, it's much better to hear the original person. When I buy any kind of book on Audible book, I much prefer to see if the book has been narrated by the author. Otherwise, you're pretty much listen to an actor, I suppose. And it's less authentic.
Yeah, and it's brilliant for international teachers, because we always say, oh, it can take a while for books to get to Abu Dhabi. Whereas on Audible, I can just download it there and then, and I can listen by the pool. So
thanks for listening. Thanks for reading it.
Yeah, no, I'd read it before and I'm revisiting it. And there's lots and lots of things from that book that I want to talk to you about. So I think all of our listeners are very familiar with you, but your career is this is what I've got in my research: design technology teacher, started in 1992, various leadership roles. And I suppose it's this natural progression that you were doing all of this extra CPD, that just sort of then became your full-time job, working with schools around the world.
I think the challenge was, as the social media bubble started to grow, when was Facebook? 2004 or maybe a bit earlier than that. But using part of your day job to train teachers in your own school. So when you work in a large secondary school like I have, when you've got 250 staff to manage, knowing their name, knowing their professional needs, anything that's going on at home, and then trying to map that alongside school priorities as a full-time job amongst your own teaching requirements and all the other kind of job responsibilities that you have. And I think after doing it in 3 different secondary schools, I started to get better at it, I suppose. And I think alongside the growth of Twitter and blogging, you kind of filter out the kind of useful ideas and not so ideas. You can kind of experiment with different templates and post them online and see what other people think before you share them with staff. And Mark Plan Teach evolved in that way. We built our own teaching and learning policy in school, and behind the scenes I blogged it, and staff were quite aware of that. So I would bring that back in and say, look, this is what people think. This idea's crashed and burned. What do you think? Should we stick with it? So we very much designed our own policy for our own kids and our own teaching staff. But it was curated by my social media followers as that grew. And, Mark Plan Teach, a lot of the kind of teaching and learning policy is pretty much most of my online work or physical work before the pandemic I do with schools, developing research-informed teaching and learning policies that don't hang schools out to dry when they're inspected. And I think, just that love of my own CPD and then sharing that back at school and doing it with a large number of staff, I think naturally you're then started to be invited to speak in other schools or to speak at events. And I think the tipping point was there's only so much you can do. So if you're working 50 to 80 hour weeks and then you're prepared, a lot of, I observe Twitter, and we'll talk about this a bit later, but I observe a lot of teachers doing this, and I can see where I've been through that. You are working, doing your day job, and then you're speaking at an event at the weekend or hosting a radio show in the evening, that type of stuff. And you start to get very thinly spread, and then it kind of emerges into your half-term holidays. So you have to be very careful about your own workload, your mental health. And I think that's where I've been through that whole process. So that's why I'm quite outspoken about it online. There's only so much you can do, I suppose. And we could, we should all share our wisdom, but not at the cost of our own kind of families and our workload, and more importantly, our own day-to-day job, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke to me about this because obviously I've been the same. I've writing books in the classroom, and it is rewarding, but it's really tough at times. But I asked Tom Shevington about this as well, because I remember you coming out to Dubai and you've been all over the world. Mm-hmm. So how have you found it with obviously the pandemic and the Zoom elements? Do you prefer less traveling? Do you miss going to visit school?
I mean, I absolutely love being in schools. At the start of the pandemic, like everyone else, I was very frightened, very nervous. Suddenly to see my diary in the first couple of weeks disappear, and then within a month, my CPD diary is booked up at least 2 years in advance. So it all disappeared. So I've been doing webinars for 10 years. So I just spent a couple of days switching all my content to online webinars, created loads of Eventbrite pages and stuff like that. And very quickly, I was inundated with doing loads of webinars, and it kind of all went through March, April, May, June of 2020. So at least, I guess from a financial perspective, I could pay my salary. So that was reassuring. But then, as we started to see that this was not a kind of a quick thing, we were all going to be doing this for quite some time. Slowly, schools, or at least my own work, we all started to adapt to working online. So yeah, there's the Zoom fatigue. I've got a bit bored with it, to be honest. So I've got in my little office here a little kind of large whiteboard TV screen. So I've been trying to stand in front of it and do webinars in that way and just mix it up a little bit. And I've been to a couple of schools physically, plus I've relocated, so that's been a challenge, getting to know the local area during a pandemic. But I've managed to get to 2 schools, which was interesting. And from September, the diary at least looks like I'm physically off into schools again, and that will carry on. But my challenge before the pandemic was trying to deal with all my traveling, the exhaustion coupled with that, and managing the website, which is a full-time job in its own right. But it's the CPD that I love with teachers that really gets me excited. So it's balancing that. So I guess I've gone from one extreme to the other. Now the challenge is going forward, trying to keep that nice balance of working from home, working online, being in schools, and being a bit more selective about the work that I choose to do.
Yeah, and your website is fantastic. It's clear you've invested a lot of time, effort, energy into it.
And money.
And money, yeah. Obviously, well, it is great. I use it a lot. Retrieval practice, but actually so much stuff. Like, again, you cover the breadth of stuff from, well-being, CPD, cognitive load theory. It's fantastic. So I would urge everyone to check out Ross's website. But actually, you are easily, I think, the most followed teacher on Twitter by quite a long shot, I think. I don't know how many followers you've got with Teacher Toolkit. I can have a look now, but it's loads.
Yeah, I mean, across all my channels, it's probably 350,000, which is just ridiculous. But I always tell everyone I started with one follower, and of course I now research social networks from my doctoral studies, but it's if you go back to the Teach Meet, Kate, it's all about creating networks and collaboration, and all I've done is do that online. And because you do it publicly, people can choose to follow you or not, and they can choose to connect and reply or not. And I think going way back to the early days when I started to use Twitter in 2008, I spent years talking to people, replying, growing relationships, growing online networks. I founded SLT Chat in 2012, and I did it myself on a Sunday night for 3 years solid before I brought in a second person. And that's now thriving in its own right on a Sunday night every week with a team of about 8 or 9 school leaders. So it's these things take a long time to grow. You can type in the word plenaries on Google and my website will be the first rank. These things are all very flattering, but over 15 years of doing it, it's an investment of time. You go through all the blogging journey where you do clickbait headlines, you say inappropriate things, you say things that are transformational or influence many others or even policy. So it's all a learning curve. I guess now, 15 years later, there's a lot more platforms, there's a lot more technology, and new teachers entering the profession can profit from seeing other people who've done it and can very much quickly get set themselves up and start and actually also make an online income. A topic we don't want to talk about, that teacher salary isn't so great, so people can earn an online pocket money from sharing the resources. And I know that topic will divide the profession, but it's just the nature of working in an online environment now.
Yeah, it has completely transformed. I didn't even know about teachers blogging or Teach Meets happening, and all these things did lead to me writing my own books. But I have a fraction of the followers you have, and I've spoke to Tom Rogers, who I know that you know, and we've noticed obviously the more followers that we get, that's great, more engagement, more readers, but there's a sort of dark side to that as well, more conflict.
I've been through all of that. What I've actually found and what I've been researching is the more followers you gain, you start to say less. It's really interesting. And, where I post selfies and I'm doing this, or what do you think of this, that organic process, I do that a little bit more on my personal account, but I'm also conscious that I'm letting the world into my personal life. So you choose what to share online, and you choose whether to keep it open or locked. But a Teacher Toolkit, very much, I think the audience grew from me sharing, the Mark Plan teaching and learning policy, and it grew people around me. There's other, the SLT chat network, or me tweeting selfies at different schools that I visit. And then there's the odd controversial view, and you'll know that, the quote tweets and all that type of stuff. And I could count at least a handful of nasty sides of Twitter that have totally ruined my weekend. So you have to manage your social media. You have to bear in mind that sadly, human beings, including teachers, do say nasty things, and some people do choose to go out of their way to berate or be critical or lie or whatever it would be to do whatever they want. So with a large following like myself, I suppose you can't pretend that it's not all going to be rosy. It will bring a lot of criticism, so I have to manage that. And I think after 15 years of doing it, I've learned how to navigate it now. And if I do say something that accidentally goes viral and might cause a bit of controversy, I just learn I've learned what to do with it, I suppose, whether to delete it or to apologize or to leave it there if it's a view that you believe. But what Twitter's like, it's polarized, it's a binary platform, it's designed in that way to drive conversation. Twitter's amalgamate. My view of social media is that they've all amalgamated into one large mush, that you can do your stories and your fleets and your quote tweets on all the platforms now, and they're very hard to identify particular differences between each. So you've got to choose which one you think is useful for you. And not all teachers will use social media at all for professional reasons. but there's a large community, at least on Twitter, who do. And there's an enormous amount of teachers that are on there. It's just it's very hard to track how many and who, and different pockets, different communities. But it's a great resource if you can learn to master the technology and learn how to use it to profit from professional learning.
That's really good advice. And isn't this is what it's your doctorate about how teachers use social media?
Yeah, roughly. It's so I'm very interested in networks. So that's, your collaborations, your TeachMeet type stuff. But I'm looking at visual social media network analysis, which essentially is, I'd have to share a picture with you later, I suppose, to best explain it. But if you imagine a spider web, and each of the kind of parts of the spider web represent a Twitter account, if I asked you, could you tell me all the conversations you've had over the last week and write them down, you would struggle. But I can do that at a click of a button and export it and map it into a spider diagram, so to speak, and understand the relationships, the network, how people are connected, who is the big cheese, who's the influencer, and what are they talking about. And I can, as you know, you can dig into the timestamp, so when they're tweeting, how it influences subgroups and how the conversation evolves into other groups. So that's what I'm interested in from a Twitter side. Obviously, I'm looking at education. I'm looking at the teaching, Twitter, the teaching community, and I'm just dabbling with different topics, whether it's Ofsted, whether it's Gavin Williamson, or whatever it would be. And I'm currently kind of going through my upgrade, which is a struggle through the pandemic. When you're having to chase income and complete different jobs, trying to study part-time has been quite a challenge. But I'm just trying to identify my philosophical and theoretical framework. So that's essentially my philosophy on the topic and how I view the topic. So whether I've got a kind of critical realist lens, or I develop a critical autoethnography, which is essentially me describing myself as a teacher, blogger, becoming an influencer. These are some of the big headaches that I'm currently trying to define and narrow, and it's really interesting. It's definitely influenced how I work with school leaders out there in terms of leadership culture and school transformation, and in terms of me putting an academic hat on and working as a researcher, it's been very powerful. So some of the stuff that I've got into for my love of teaching and learning, all the kind of stuff I've learned academically has been very powerful.
Are you enjoying the doctorate? I mean, you said you.
I am.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. I think, the training, the full-time job of managing the website, and then trying to find some downtime to read deeply and then write. That's the challenge. It's actually sitting down and writing. So I've set my own mental deadline of last summer to go through this kind of big milestone. So I'm a year behind, essentially, in my own head. But there's no official deadline. You can take as long as you want, which is why it takes some people 7, 8, 9, 10 years. I suspect I'll be in that time frame. So I'm going into my 4th year now, but I'm enjoying it. I love the connections. I love the lectures. I'm not in a rush. I've got sufficient funds to be able to pay for it at the moment. That might change, but I'm really benefiting from the community at Cambridge and the things that I'm learning. And not only is it helping me understand the world from that perspective, but it's helped also changing the way that I work with teachers.
Yeah, well, I look forward to what you have to learn and share about that. We do have a question from a listener.
Okay.
Do you think the amount of practitioner-led content, blogs, books, resources is a double-edged sword for practicing teachers and leaders? It supports improvement, but while also placing a constant sense of ineptitude and a need to keep up.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting one, because you think of the news. You can't watch the news every day, so you only watch it when you can. You can't read everybody's blogs or books, so you choose what you can. And I think if you try to, the good thing, at least with Twitter, is it filters out the good and the bad ideas, and the good ideas filter to the top. And that's what I'm looking at as a researcher for social media. And it's very much what happens in schools. When you bring teachers together to talk about teaching and learning, the good ideas filter to the top. And I think with at least the EduTwitter community, you'll get, of course, the positive and the negative reviews of books, but you get that kind of echo chamber of certain books to read, and you'll feel like you're missing out. But there's a lot of other great stuff out there that, there's a lot of people out there that don't have the network that I do, or the resources or the people around them to shout. So it's, as ever, you need to read widely, but certainly choose a specific topic that you're interested in, and then dig deep. And then as you dig deep, you realize there's a whole world out there. I'd never heard of social media network analysis 3 years ago. Now I'm into it. There's a whole world out there. And I'm a newbie. I'm an NQT in this field, and there's people who've been doing it for years. So I'm discovering all sorts of interesting things. And my network is very broad. I don't just follow teachers on Twitter. I follow academics. I follow social media network analysis. I follow politicians. So you've got to decide how you want to use your resources around you. It's pretty much like you work in school. You might work with a team of 5 people, but you might not choose to go and speak to your own immediate team for ideas about how to solve a problem with a child in your classroom. You might go to someone outside of your team. It's just like how you would use a physical network in your own school environment. So I think it's important to have a broad lens, but also be very narrow about what you want to benefit from. And I think the other issue, at least with online blogs and articles, is everyone has an opinion. You're not going to agree with everyone, but you cannot also be sure about the reliability of their opinion or the resource. So you have to work hard to ensure that if there's something that someone's blogging about that you think might be useful in your own classroom or school, you just need to dig carefully, do a bit of reading, check references, etc., and just make sure it's the right thing to do. Because there's a lot, the world of misinformation now and disinformation. There's a lot out there that is designed to deliberately mislead people. And I hate to say it, but it also happens in the education sector. So we have to be careful, and that's why we have the myths and the fads of things that spread also. So we have to be quite careful about our sources.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw this with the EEF cognitive science report that came out.
Yes.
And it felt like people were reading the different report at times, with some of the headlines and the comments. And,
yes.
You wrote a really great blog about that, as did a few other people, which helped me because I was in the presentation the week before, and then obviously I read the report, and then I was reading other things.
Yeah, it was a great report. And I think, obviously the EEF are funded in a particular way. They have certain projects that are approved. So in that sense, there are certain things that they can and cannot report on. So that's a bias in itself. However, they do at least present an independent perspective to a degree on education research. And I think I love all this cognitive science stuff. For me, it's only been, I've used retrieval practice strategies throughout my whole career. I just never knew as a cognitive scientist that the word was called retrieval. Now I've researched memory, it's very obvious. But for teachers throughout my career, I called it revision. And these are the strategies that I used for 20 odd years. What I loved about the report was it offered a balanced and independent review of the cognitive science. And as ever, context is key, and it's sometimes too early to tell. And although it's been quite exciting to unpick, long-term memory and everything else, my question, as always, is, well, what does this look like in a year 1 classroom, or in an alternative provision, or with a year 9 who's grumpy on a Friday afternoon? And that's the question all teachers should constantly ask if they're really interested in research beyond their own classroom. And of course, we want ideas for ourselves to make our lives easier and to make a difference to our kids. But research can only guide us, and it can only take us in a certain... There's many roads to Mecca, is a phrase that I often use. I can go around the M25 and take the boat across to France and drive all the way there. You can fly directly from Heathrow. There's lots of different ways to do one thing. And I think with cognitive science, at least on the surface, what I've started to discover is that broadly it tends to be science and maths and secondary, not drama, not art, not year one.
Mhm.
And I think we have to be cautious with that. And what's worrying is to see how it's already influencing DFE and Ofsted policy, because then that becomes the inspector's lens when they come to test what's happening in the school classrooms. So we have to be very careful with how these things evolve and how they end up becoming printed in black and white policy papers that are then used to determine what is or what is not good teaching. But it's complicated.
Well, we've just had a comment in: consistently top quality ideas, guidance and resources, Ross. Thank you. Still grounded despite the success. Oh, that's really nice.
Oh, that's very nice. That's made my Friday. Thank you.
Well, yeah. I was going to ask you about, because you read a lot about cognitive science. You've been reading lots of books about memory as well lately. So that does seem like it's something you're very interested in at the moment.
So I think, it's important, I think, with my audience to let people know that I'm no different to everyone else. I go on my own journey too. I've made loads of mistakes. You can dig in my blog and see all sorts of car crash thoughts and opinions. We all go in this journey as we develop in our lives and we grow with wisdom. And I think for me, my cognitive science journey probably spans 10 years now. And although I'm getting quite obsessed with memory, it's now, over the last 2 years, it's emerged into me reading about the brain. And actually parts of the brain, from the myelin shaft to axons to the hippocampus, what they do and what parts of it are shaped by retrieval. And I found it quite fascinating. I can give a new word to everybody if everyone wants to learn some new etymology of language. The word memory evolved from the word mnemosyne, which is the Greek goddess of memory. So if you're interested in the origins of memory, there you go. A new word, mnemosyne. It's exciting to learn, and I think all of us as teachers, we've got that gene, and that's something that we try to pass on to our children. So I'm no different to everyone else, but I have spent the last 2 years writing my new book on, I say memory loosely, I guess it's me trying to unpick what is this kind of fascination with long-term memory. What does it look like in a year 1 classroom as well as a year 11 classroom, maths, science, drama? But I've taken it a little bit further and I've explored parts of the brain because it's my own interest. The challenge is, how do I make that relevant to teachers and what difference will it make in their classroom? So that's the current struggle of me editing the book and trying to turn it into a set of practical ideas. So I've kind of gone back to Dunlosky's research and looked at the efficacy of all those different revision strategies. And I think you'll have seen that in my newsletter anyway, that resource. So I'm trying to tweak all that into the research that I've done and turn it into a practical guide. Probably a kind of beginner's guide to memory for teachers, I suppose, is what I've tried to pitch it at. So that'll be out next year at some point.
Oh, that's really exciting. And next week, my guest is Professor Pooja Agarwal. So I know
Pooja.
you're a fan.
Love Pooja, yes.
Yeah.
Well, Pooja and Patricia's book really inspired me a couple of years ago when they published Powerful Teaching. Loads of resources, loads of ideas, really both very passionate and excited about their research and the world of retrieval. And, both of them, as well as many others, have really transformed a lot of teachers' understanding of the retrieval term and its strategies. I still work with many teachers who are a bit nervous. They don't know what it is or what it means. But when you say it's a revision approach, the light bulb illuminates. So I think we shouldn't be scared of the research and academic phrases. As ever, I think it guides us. It can give us some reassurance. Of course, there's some warnings with them evolving into myths and fads, or they can get a little bit complicated, or they can't necessarily tell teachers what to do. They can give you a set of recommendations. As ever, research, the hard work for teachers, I need to translate that into my classroom and you need to translate that into your classroom, Kate. And that's the challenge that teachers will always have, regardless of what research is published.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, I say this, and I know you spoke about my book recently and about the jigsaw puzzle and how research is just one piece of that puzzle. And that's why your book, Just Great Teaching, is so good, because research is a chapter. But then there's chapters obviously on behaviour and planning and assessment. And it just goes to show with Just Great Teaching, it is this combination of all of these factors, and there is a lot for us as teachers to get to grips with as well. So I really like the breadth and the depth of your book. And in your book, you refer to the Grim Reaper. So for anyone who's not familiar with your book, who's the Grim Reaper?
Well, I was waiting for this conversation to come up. I think I need to dispel a few myths. So Grim Reaper is Ofsted. I think we need Ofsted. Believe it or not, I actually believe schools should be inspected more. However, Ofsted currently don't have the capacity to inspect all schools. As you'll know, there are outstanding schools out there that haven't been inspected for 10 plus years. My issue is the grading system used to determine the quality of schools. And I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on the radio, tell me if I'm not. But, I've been teaching a long time. I've put the same amount of energy and effort in all the different types of schools that I've worked with. I don't see that I or the colleagues around me have done much that's different to anybody else. What Ofsted can't yet do is distinguish the impact that parents or different types of pupils have on school success. And whilst they recognize that schools are different, their framework doesn't adapt to suit that differentiation. So it's one policy, one size fits all. And if we want a one size fits all, well, we know it only fits one person. So regardless of school that you fit in, that's how you are judged. And although, I quite recognize that Spielman has done a great job in changing Ofsted dialogue and approach and research, I think that's welcome. I still think there's a lot of work to do there. But we cannot ignore that the chasing the Ofsted headlines, the Ofsted game still exists, and in some schools it drives teachers crazy and leads to all sorts of silly things going on. I think the issue I have is that if your school's down that road and it's judged outstanding, we have to accept that, therefore, if we have an outstanding framework, we accept that we have an inadequate framework, and that we are quite happy that some schools will be judged inadequate. And we all know that those teachers are no different to you or I. It's just there'll be a different context, a different leadership. Obviously, there's lots of kind of logistical things that we could unpick that are going on behind the scenes, the HR process, the finance management, the governance, etc. So there's a lot of things, but it breaks my heart to see an education system that's inspecting 25,000 schools. We don't even have to talk about all the nursery provision that's out there and all the kind of things that Ofsted has to tackle, as well as, we get into the sexual harassment and all the things that have emerged lately that they have not done well enough. They've got a big job in their hands. I think government don't fund them enough, first of all. But my specific issue is on the reliability, that if we know that grading lessons is flawed, surely if I pop into your school for a day or a day and a half to inspect and test certain aspects of your school life and not really get into the nitty-gritty of what goes on there day to day, then surely the reliability of grading a school is more flawed because of the complex nature of school life and how much I have to measure or judge in that short time. And I think what concerns me the most is that this graded system pushes a lot of brilliant school leaders like myself and other teachers out of the profession or mental health or what have you. And it regurgitates this, I become a superhead, I take on 3 or 4 other schools, and I get a gong from the Queen and all sorts of things. And it just perpetuates this myth that we can measure school success in a day and a half. My view is, and this is something, a specific topic that I'm researching for my doctorate, is that I think the grading system perpetuates inequality. across England, because we all know that schools that are in certain parts of the UK, of England are more likely to be graded better than others, and certain types of schools with certain demographics are less or more likely to struggle to get a good rating, or often spend a decade under the requires improvement umbrella. And then politician comes along, Nicky Morgan or whoever, you can call it a coastal school or a challenging school, and or then they call it a stuck school, and then it just makes this it makes the system worse. So I have got some alternatives. I've blogged about it a lot. I've written about it. I've put out lots of videos. I think I think people know where I stand, but not a lot of people know that I actually think we should inspect schools more. Ofsted should be funded more, but it definitely needs reformed. I guess looking at Ofsted now as a governor and as a parent, I've got different perspectives on the inspection system, I suppose, now. The challenge is there are a lot of stakeholders out there who have a view on school inspection. You know, and if I pay my taxes, I'm also a taxpayer, as is everybody else who isn't a teacher, who isn't a parent, or isn't a governor. So the challenge is, how do we have an inspection service that inspects schools, colleges, nurseries, what have you, to safeguard our children, to ensure a good quality of education, as with everything else that they go in to do, but can do it on a more frequent basis without it damaging the teaching profession, I think is my synopsis.
Well, it's really interesting to hear that. And I mean, I was familiar with, your opinions and your experiences. And I always describe myself as Ofsted neutral. I've never experienced Ofsted. I've taught in Wales, and we had Estyn. We never had the fear around. There was graded schools, but it wasn't the
well, I guess
fear and the
Estyn,
pressure.
you had 6 weeks notice, didn't you, before?
Yeah, we did. And,
when I started teaching, Ofsted gave us, I think, 6 or 8 weeks. So we'd paint. It was like the Queen coming to visit. We'd paint the corridors, put all the posters up, and that's not a true reflection on school life. I think I've pushed 10 Ofsted inspections now. My most treasured memory was in that school where I worked with Tom Sherrington in 2002 or 3. Where we had a subject inspector alongside me as a head of department for a week. So we had a proper conversation. Questions were posed at the end of the day. I had overnight or the next morning to discuss and explain. And it was a genuine professional development opportunity to really get into the nitty gritty, a different period of time, different funding, etc., and a different kind of inspector, I suppose. So it's very, it's complicated. It's different. It's very hard to come to a solution that's going to suit everybody. But I don't think we're there yet, and I don't think it's the end of Ofsted reform. And I don't think, I've put out for a long time now. Ofsted at some point will cease to exist. I think I don't know when that will happen, but I do think we need to have school inspection. We can't have this enormous, whatever billion numbers of pounds invested in education, paying teacher salaries, and to not have a framework for school success or high standards. So I'm not here to advocate I want lower standards and let teachers off the hook. That far from it. But I want to have a system that doesn't damage teacher mental health or force great school leaders, hundreds of head teachers out there that I know, that have been forced out of their school because of an Ofsted grade. So that's my view. Can we move on to a different topic?
Yeah, no. I've asked a few people. I asked Dame Alison Peacock. She said the exact same thing as you about the grading, and she's someone who turned a school from special measures to outstanding. I spoke to Professor Daniel Mears, and he obviously worked for Ofsted.
Yes.
And he said about the problems with grading schools as well. So, it's really interesting for me to have these conversations and moving back to the UK. And you're a really, important voice in education. And I do think that it is important that we keep talking about it. We keep reflecting. And we've had a comment on some comments on Twitter from Sarah Powers. Great conversation this morning with Teacher Toolkit. Someone on Facebook asked, would you be education minister? Like, is that something that you have you thought about that?
I've had a lot of people bang that my way over the years. I don't think I could cope with the stress, to be honest. And I think where I currently sit, I'm another umbrella that I'm trying to narrow down for my research is looking at teacher autonomy. And, my life as a blogger has given me a lot of freedom. If people really dig into the Teacher Toolkit story, I lost my job to academization, took voluntary redundancy, got a lot of debt, had to sell my house. And that's when I started Teacher Toolkit, writing for free, writing in the Guardian, whatever, to kind of grow a bit of a reputation, to speculate on different areas of education industry outside the classroom, to make a living and feed my family. I got back into the classroom 2 or 3 months later and carried on with the blog and Teacher Toolkit. And you'll know more than everyone that it started to grow, and it got to a place where this platform, Teacher Toolkit, gave me a choice. And I suppose, I had freedom to either work full time as a teacher or go and work for myself as Teacher Toolkit and pay myself. And that's what I now choose to do. And I have that autonomy, but it's been hard fought. And I've gone through lots of ups and downs along the way. And I could quite easily go back to the classroom full time. But I know that my impact and my wisdom is supporting a lot more teachers further afield than just my own little kind of school silo, I suppose. And with that, there is that influence on politics and the education minister. And with all the kind of different MPs out there following me and listening to me, I suppose. I just want a better education system. I want it to be as fair as possible. All that kind of notion of populism and, backhanders and academization, even state school system too. We can't just pretend it's a certain area of school life. I think it's complicated. I certainly don't want to be the education minister. But that autonomy is something that I'm very interested in, and now 15 years later, I see everyone else. You're on your own radio show, and some teachers are allowed to do that in their school because their employer doesn't want them to express an opinion publicly on social media. So we've got that whole aspect of teacher professionalism that's quashed also. So I think my autonomy has been hard fought. It's been a really interesting practical journey in terms of experiences, but also now theoretically looking at it as a teacher voice, teacher autonomy, the freedoms associated with making an online income, to sharing videos, to writing books. It's very, very interesting. It's there for everyone to take. Obviously, some schools don't allow their teachers to do that. Some people don't believe in teachers profiting, etc., etc. Yeah, but I don't know if that's answered the question, but no education minister, no thanks.
No, okay.
I'm quite happy to kind of chip along from the outside and influence people that way.
Yeah, okay. So Gavin Williamson, he's safe for now.
Yeah,
but you did write. I really like in Just Great Teaching, obviously because I've got this background in Wales, and you made lots of comments about how there's different relationships with the education ministers in Wales and the differences. It's really interesting being in Abu Dhabi, and we have British curriculum schools, so we do it the British way. And your book, Just Great Teaching, there's not many books that actually really point out the differences between Wales, England, and Scotland, and they just sort of categorize them together. And they are very different and unique, aren't they?
Well, they are, yeah. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have a chat several times with Kirsty Williams and understand the Welsh system, the kind of new curriculum, how teachers are supported there. Obviously, you got a local authority nuance there in Wales, where local authorities have a very, I have to choose my language carefully, look after schools very closely. In Scotland, you've got a very similar approach, but you've got the online platform Glow Scotland, where teachers can create online portfolios of observations and professional development. And that's something that Chartered College of Teaching could do in England. We're not just there yet with that. But it gives teachers a degree of professionalism. All teachers are coached in Scotland. So there's very, very different systems, but they're all going in the same directions. They're just doing it in different ways. You've got the Scottish inspection system too. So there's a resource that I've got on my site, a kind of curriculum evaluation resource, and it's heavily influenced by all the different, Northern Ireland included, the inspection systems that each of them have, and the processes that those inspection systems use to evaluate school success. And that's very much just great teaching, visiting schools all over the country, seeing what is very interesting about each different system. I guess in the book, I looked at what would be beneficial to teachers or school leaders specifically working across pockets of the UK to make their life a bit easier.
And I know you were a keynote speaker in Malaysia. Was it in Kuala Lumpur? Because they contact.
It was Penang, the little
Penang.
island, Penang. Yeah, so that was a great experience. That was a couple of Novembers ago, before the pandemic. That was a great experience going over there for the Fabicia network and keynote and loads of workshops. Again, visiting teachers or British teachers in some respects in other pockets of the world. That going back to that word autonomy, teachers being very excited to work in a different type of school system where their freedom to choose their own curriculum, the freedom to teach in a certain way, all the lesson plan dialogue, the lesson observations, the grading, so different to what we have here in England. Not a lot of people will know that the research time and time again in England suggests that teachers have one of the lowest autonomies in all OECD countries. So in one school, you might have a lot of freedom. You might be able to do X, Y, Z. But in the grand scheme of things, when you evaluate teacher decision-making or school leadership decision-making in England in comparison to other countries, we are woefully behind our international counterparts. So we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, it is interesting learning about my experiences being international, and I'm returning back to the UK after 6 years. So, and I'm not quite sure where I'll be teaching, but
And we haven't talked about the Dubai inspection framework there. I know that's a tough one over there, isn't it?
Well, Dubai and Abu Dhabi have different inspection frameworks, but there's some similarities with the grading, and I actually had a meeting with someone from KHDA Dubai Inspector Framework about them stopping grading lessons. Yes. And that's obviously, you've been great with that actually. Years ago, that deputy head, his name was Paul Williams, and he told everyone in the staff room to follow you on Twitter, to get on Twitter. But I think I was like young, I was like, okay, I'll try Twitter. And people were just like, what? Is he serious? Telling us to tweet, and then and actually, I remember lots of the things that you were sharing were then like being fed into my school because my deputy head was following you. Yeah. And we did not grade lesson observations or anything like that. And it was really brilliant.
Well,
but
the research, at least on grading lessons, is 30% of English schools still grade teachers despite the research. So I think we've got, research loosely speaking, the schools on the ground, you're kind of a decade behind policy research recommendations before it actually filters through. And I think that's for obvious reasons. Teachers are very busy people. You've got a lot of things to deal with, a lot of different topics, a lot of different challenges. And not everyone has time to research and, anything to change things. It's like turning the big ship, isn't it, in schools? It takes a long time, and often the academic year is the starting point of where new policies are introduced. You've got the logistics of new kids, new staff, so there's constant pressures. So things to change in schools do take some time before that culture is really embedded. And that graded lessons ones, it's one that myself, David Dadow, Tom Bennett, Sheena Lewington, an old Twitter governor blogger, and Tom Sherrington, under Mike Claddenball, he invited us in just before Sean Harford was appointed, and we got to look at the policy on grading lessons and I guess red penned the policy framework, and we got to kind of dispel the myth that Ofsted wanted to grade lessons, and it filtered through, and it was quite a landmark at the time. I think it was one of the first, at least public Twitter roundtable discussions at Ofsted. What I'm also interested in is, how do teachers influence education policy? Yes, we do it on Twitter, but what happened before Twitter is also an interesting question. How do people bend the ears of ministers to change policy or school leadership life? It is another thing for us to consider. Anyway, shall we talk about some practical tips, Kate, for teachers? Because I'm getting lost in policy in my research.
Oh, no,
I
honestly,
don't think that's what teachers want.
I need longer. Like, I could talk to you. I want you to write a book about your career, like just about your life and your career and your reflections. And
yeah,
but something that, well, you have written 6 books, but I mean, just one, just about. It's really fascinating. But I think throughout my whole time that I've been following you, something that is really, really important to you is, and we touched on it as well today, is workload and teacher well-being, and the fact that you've taken control of your life, and you have obviously now got this career because you've got Freddie and your family, and but there's been workload issues in the past, obviously when you were a deputy head, and I remember seeing a photo of you where you were really quite ill and you had a bad eye, and and so workload and well-being is definitely something that you're passionate about. So would you have any sort of advice or tips about how we can sort of
there's a great TED talk by a chap called Nigel Marsh. I can't remember the exact title, but if you go on TED Talk and research workload well-being by Nigel Marsh, there's a great 20-minute video, and it brought tears to my eyes because he talks about a little part of the story where he had the day off work, or he had to go home early, and he took his son out to the park and just read a book to his son, and his son said it was the best day of his life. And it's like little moments like that you start to evaluate what are the no one's going to remember on your gravestone that Ross worked hard, he had 300,000 followers. They would much rather know that I was a kind person, I was a great family man, etc. That's what I want to be remembered for, not that I had loads of followers. So, we choose our own workload. Going back to that Life Teachers Online now, you're blogging, you've got a radio show, you're writing books. That's a workload issue in its own right, alongside your full-time job. Suddenly if you had a family and, a disability or whatever, suddenly life gets a bit more challenging. So you can't sustain all those things. And I think my life going back to 2014, deputy head, challenging school in Westminster, managing 2,000 kids, 250 staff, 80-hour weeks, trying to help the school turn around, and this big distraction called Teacher Toolkit, and trying to be a good dad at home and a good husband. That's relentless. To then have someone pop in for a day to inspect your school and say what you're doing is not good enough, I found quite difficult. There's a great quote by Nigel Marsh that if you don't determine what your own work-life balance is, someone else will determine it for you, and you may not like their version of what it is. So I decided at that point that I would stop taking my teacher planner home, just take a picture of my kind of to-do list, I suppose, on my phone, disconnect all my apps on my phone that connect me back at work. And it's quite a brave thing to do as a deputy head, because I was managing cover for 250 staff. So, I'd be in at my desk at 6:30 in the morning, setting cover for everyone. So I needed to go home every day with a clear knowing what was happening the next day. But I needed to have some downtime when I went home, not sit at my desk working until 11 o'clock every night. Then there's the blog and everything else. So I made a decision to make a change. And I think 3 years later, as the Teacher Toolkit stuff started to also grow, and Mark Plan Teach and the demand to speak at schools across the world, I started to think about going part-time. And I think the Ofsted decision on the school at the time just made me make the decision quicker, sadly. But the Teacher Toolkit forces another workload pressure on me. So I now am at the place where I choose what to write and I choose what to tweet, and I don't do it all the time. It's just, yes, it's a business, but I still treat it as a bit of a hobby. There's a business side of it that I have to manage. But before that, as when I was working full-time as a deputy, I didn't have that pressure. But I didn't have now I don't have the pressure of working as a deputy head, although, I've got my research pressures and things like that. I feel very blessed, but I have to be very clear to listeners that my autonomous position that I now have has been hard fought through redundancy, debt, mental health issues, seeing a school be judged special measures to a point where I decided to leave before being told to leave, and then having to make a decision on my future career. So, the money I also spend on the website to make it work. If I tweet out an article to all my followers, my website would crash. So there's a lot of investment behind the scenes just to keep my website alive and open access for teachers to read. It's not just a free blog platform there. It's a bit of pocket money spent on a monthly basis to keep the website open and functional. So that comes with time, effort, and energy, but it's a choice, and I'm blessed enough to be able to have that choice. I know that things don't last forever, and my teacher toolkit bubble will burst at one point in the future. But right now I'm enjoying it, and I'm loving working with loads of teachers around the world. I feel very lucky. I also learn from them, and that makes me richer and wiser.
Oh, we obviously learned so much from you. I've tweeted out the TED Talk, how to make work-life balance work. But the reason I wanted you so much on the show is obviously been following you throughout my whole career, read all your books. You are a social media superstar, but I view you as one of the nicest people in education. So kind and helpful and generous with your
Well, I've got
time.
a nasty side.
I haven't seen that, so.
Well, I'll say no. I've got a sharp side, I should say. I've got a sharp side. But we all have.
Well, yeah, absolutely, we all have. And we've had lots of comments. Dory's just said, great show. We've had some comments on Twitter just saying that loving hearing from you, loving the conversation, and it's just been really, really interesting. So that's it. Perfect timing, actually. Although I've got more questions, but maybe another time.
Yeah, well, I just say one thing, Kate. It's been great to see your own journey and success and all the things you do. And I think the sooner you get back to the UK, the better that we can all profit from you being here on the island. So, I look forward to you being back.
Oh, we'll have to catch up, and I'll come to where you're based, and we'll have that selfie 5 years, 6 years later, then and now with all of our. But yeah, thank you again so much, and everybody obviously do check out your website, teachertoolkit.co.uk. Is that correct? I think.
Yeah.
Have I got it right? Yeah.
Say hello on whatever platform, and I'll reply back in some shape or form. But I'm just reaching the beginning of the school holidays, so I'm slowly turning into, when your brain starts to go a bit mushy and you forget what day it is. So I'm getting into that kind of zone at the moment. I'm going to have another couple of weeks off before I get back to the desk. So you caught me. You got me out of bed, and it's been nice to catch up. And thanks to everyone for listening. Oh,
thank you. Yeah, and enjoy the rest of your summer holidays and take that well-earned break.
Cheers,
Thank you, Ross.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, and thank you everybody for listening. I absolutely loved that conversation. We can keep it going on social media, and I will be back this time next week with Professor Pooja K. Agarwal. So once again, big thanks to Ross Morrison McGill for the lovely Teacher Toolkit.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.